Oh, dear goodness gracious. Ugh. Sound guy, why don't you turn that volume on? I don't even know what's the matter with you, how often you could possibly do that. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm heating up my coffee. It was no emergency. As you saw, I have my water, heating up my coffee, and I will be right back. Okay? I'm leaving the volume on so I don't make that mistake again. Why is the sound guy always a guy? I don't know. Because we know who's making the mistakes around here, don't we? Okay, but not Job. Because Job, how about that for a segue? Spell segue. Not easy. Alrighty then. Got started with all kinds of stuff. Didn't we? Spelling, early birds. I don't know. What else? I don't even know. But I have my coffee and it's hot, but not too hot, which is just perfect. Like Goldilocks, right? And we are talking about Job today. And oh, that fell out of where I was. Okay, anyway. So I want to get started sort of right away with this because I'm going to do a lot of reading out of Job. I picked the chapters I want to read, and there's kind of a lot of reading here, and I love reading to people. I think we don't get read to enough, and even if it's history or whatever, you could do other things, right? I could read it to you. You could read more. You could read less. You could do whatever you could do searches on the internet. You could do geography searches because I give you enough information, all kinds of things that you can do. But here, I do like to read, and I like you to have an appreciation for books. I feel books are sacred, starting with Scripture, our Bible. The book I'm reading from, the Bible I'm going to be reading from, is The Bible for Hope, which is by Tim Clinton, who's the president of American Association for Christian Counselors. He is the executive editor. I really felt great that I got my hands on this Bible because it is a Bible for counselors. And in between all of the stories are all of these notes that Dr. Clinton put in here in between these things. And I think they're so helpful. So I was very lucky. There were only 2 copies of this available when I got it. And one of them was $500 and the other one was or something like $300, honestly. And the other one was mine for $10. Somebody wanted this in my hands, which I find with a lot of books. So now's the time, I think, to get your hands on books. If you're wondering about or worrying about information, and we're in the spiritual classroom, so we're still talking about information, right? And so if you're worried about information and getting the right information, get books, right? I am getting all kinds of books from libraries. Here I started on The Lost Boys, which we're going to be talking about in our philosophical classroom. I talked a little bit about, yeah, and you can see how much I got through, which isn't a lot, but actually that is really, really good for me to have gotten through that much because it's not my main priority. It's not the only thing I'm reading. As you know, I had to read all of Job, and I didn't get through all of Job. I've read it before, just to be, honest with you. I didn't get through all of Job. I think I got through chapter 26 of Job, and there are 40. I didn't put this down. There are 42 chapters in Job, 42 chapters. It is really an extraordinary book. So let's take a look at what I wanted to show you and get started here. I wasn't recording myself, but it'll be recorded on YouTube. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. And so what are we talking about? Job, who is a blameless and upright man. And I'm going to make, so the book of Job is what we're talking about, right? Which is one of 66 books in a Christian Bible and one of 73, I believe it is, in the Catholic Bible books. If you compare scripture to scripture, they are saying all the same thing. Not even kind of basically, but no, they are saying the same thing. I mean, not exactly, but almost exactly, just in different words for people to understand, but the same. They didn't change the idea, they didn't change the theme, none of it. But you could do your own deep dive on that when you want to as well, right? So check out, and on Bible Gateway, you can see the different books, different types of editions, right? So New English Standard Edition, new, what is it? NWV, New World Version, I think it is. So there's there is the King James Version, there's the New King James Version, there's the Catholic version, there's the, all kinds of versions of the Bible, and they are the versions of that Bible. And if you wanted to go to a bookstore, you can go and buy the versions or compare it, or go to the library and look for the different versions of the Bible if you want to do it that way by actually looking at the books. But the books are basically saying the same thing. And again, what I like about this one is that it really does, it's for counselors. And it gives you so many commentaries in here for counselors. All right, so full disclosure, I read through about chapter 26, I think. But I've read it before. I've read it a few times, not several, but a few times. And I get the gist of the way that Job is set up. I think that the book of Job, I do think that it's interesting that we see it's J-O-B, which we say job, but we pronounce it Job. So I think it's interesting with this comparison with Job, because really, if you want the main theme of Job, Job had a job to do. And his job was to set an example for what it's like when we have trials and tribulations that we can't explain, because that's going to happen in all of our lives. But it's never going to happen to the extent that it happened to Job. And there is the thesis statement for Job. Job had a job to do. And what was Job's job that he had to do? What he had to do was he had to set an example for when we experience trials and tribulations that we cannot explain. But our trials and tribulations will never be to the extent, our sufferings will never be to the extent of Job's sufferings. So let's hear about his sufferings, and let's hear about how he handled his sufferings. Because like I said, I have a lot of reading I want to do here. Now, before I start reading, I wanted to give you this so that you could see the Bible in chronological order. And so if you look there at the very top left there, you can see that we went through Genesis and laid the foundation for Genesis. And we talked even in the early bird classroom about Noah's Ark, and actually asking the question about whether or not there would be dinosaurs on Noah's Ark. And just proposing that question. We're in the early bird classroom, so that's a young age. But would there have been? And they sort of make fun of the Noah's Ark in Kentucky, where there's some suggestion about dinosaurs, but they're not clear what the suggestion is. And what I suggest the suggestion is, which I haven't been there and have a desire to go, in fact said I have tickets, but that was long before COVID, but I still have tickets, so whatever, is the idea of what I think, without having gone there, about that ark, is that they were proposing that the dinosaurs became extinct somewhere in this period after Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark. Though that early world became extinct as we know it. And there are many theories and theologists that suggest that this is true, in that this earlier world became extinct. We could say we don't know, but it seems to me that And actually, let me show you something. Oh my gosh, I didn't bring it in here, but I do have it here. From the early bird classroom, let me show you this. And that is how many areas, come on, get a hold of it. How many areas actually have the same flood story? So this I find to be so interesting. And this actually is not a complete list of the flood story, but it's because there are sub areas like the Americas, it's North America and South America, and then there are areas specific in there. So Africa, Egypt and Africa, the Americas, Australia, Aztec areas. So we're talking about Mexico and Central America, Mayans, Incas, China, India, Iran, Indonesia, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Taiwan, Vietnam, Siberia, Ireland, Wales, and Finland. That's what I got from Wikipedia. So I don't know, there may be more. So it begins to make you think that the possibility of this experience that we're having is an experience that everybody has experienced, and that would make sense. If we were to wipe out, prior life, right? Dinosaurs, which did get wiped out, it certainly would be theoretically sound to suggest that that could have happened with a flood. And then archaeologists, geologists, I don't know, you know more than I do, how that would settle in the ground and provide, fuel source for human beings later on. But this suggests, again, this idea of a flood being an earthly experience, right? The whole earth experienced it. Could that have wiped out former civilization? Now, where does Job come in? Well, as we just saw, Job comes in right after the Genesis story. This gets like silly to grab. So here, right after the Genesis story, right after Noah's Ark. And in fact, this one describes it as ending in chapter 8, but actually another one describes it as ending in chapter 11. What I mean is that at chapter 11, now we turn to Job. So there's this essence that the world is just beginning when you look at the beginnings of Job, talking about how he had been traveling to and fro, but not on water, on land, not on water. Where what I said in the beginning, whoops, oops, I just dropped it. Darn it. That is not what I want to do with that book. So, if you remember, we did talk about in the beginning, because we shared that, I shared that with you from the Children's Bible, that gave me the idea about, reminded me of Satan and Job wandering to and fro. So if you remember on Thursday, I said this, and I also said it on Wednesday, that this picture, the Spirit of God floated over the waters, reminded me of Job. And so I wanted to take a look at that as far as timelines go, right? So that's how we got into the chronological order of the Bible, where we have the first 8 to 11 chapters, where we go from Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, to Noah, Noah, and then the Tower of Babel. And all of this really does clearly actually explain what would make a lot of sense for our real evolution, not discarding some evolutionary theory or the concepts, but our real evolution through time. A great flood could it have made dinosaurs and prehistoric life extinct? Why? Because it was not progressing. It wasn't evolving. That's the reason why we are not evolved at all like we should expect to be. We should have evolved anger, out of our systems. And we can't even evolve anger out of our systems. And Steven Pinkner, yeah, you said we're not becoming more violent. You're wrong. And you know you're wrong because you looked at the measures, and those measures were very incomplete. They were very biased, and you know they are. And you know they are. And the criticisms are all over the board. But as most people in this, day and age are doing, if we ignore it long enough, people will get tired of screaming it in your face all day long. Okay, so I was so if we were evolving, right, but we're not. So we have to take a lesson from Job, who was basically, the first man to give us a lesson past the sin, right? Noah did gave us a lesson, but there's some interesting things there with Noah and his son Ham as well. So if you don't know what I'm talking about and you want a little interesting sex scandal in the Bible, because that's what you go to the Bible for, have at it. I did too at first. Oh gosh, I gotta get comfy here. It slides out from underneath me. There we go. Okay, I could use a good cushion here. These are my pillows from my couch, and they're flattening fast. Okay, let's get to Job. I might have been in the middle of a thought there. All right, so people were not evolving. So wiped them out with the flood, and of course the promise was that won't ever happen again. You people are on your own. I'm not going to wipe out the crap. You're going to have to figure this out. And now we've been on our own, and look at, we figured out we can't figure it out, especially with, a bunch of white men running the superpower of the country. Not that we want a bunch of communists running it either, no matter what color or race or whatever they are, right? Because we find over and over again, flags, colors, themes like that are divisive, right? So a good idea not to see color, and you won't see color if you don't devise flags, which really goes to our philosophical classroom. And one of the first things, debatable, but one of the first things that the kids did was they made flags distinguishing themselves from others in groups and out groups, right? So we talk about that in the philosophical classroom. All right, so seems to me we would have evolved beyond all of these petty problems that we've had at the beginning, and that would be the beginning of civilized man, which looks like it happened after the flood, spiritually speaking. Come on, can I get a scientist over here who wants to study this thing and these theories? Because archaeologists go to the Bible to start their digging, right? So we've got a lot of truth here, and a lot of truth that seems to be contradicting a lot of the university's agenda, which is why I'm out, but not officially out, MFers. You have got to start doing, sorry, we're in a spiritual classroom. You got to start doing something that's going to satisfy me, and you haven't. Not at all. Not one single bit. What the heck is going on? Okay. Not even one boo. Okay, so here we are talking about the book of Job. I got to get my whatever. I had this there, and I'm like, I don't need to have my PowerPoint in front of me. A man who is blameless and upright. Now you can see right there, 1:1. What does that mean? That is chapter and verse. So divided by, it's a colon. That's a colon there. All right. So 2 holes, 2 dots. Is a colon. Okay. My mind totally went there. So that we call a Freudian slip in psychology. And it was an accurate slip as well, because that's where my mind was because of that colon. So 1 chapter, that's a chapter, right? And so we can see chapters are usually in large print. So we find the book, it's the book of Job. And there is a table of contents. So we can always we're always able to identify where those books are. All right. So there. So there in the beginning of the Bible here, so this whole Bible, you can see it's got the American Association of Christian Counselors celebrating 25 years. So there's Old Testament, there's a New Testament, and there are the contents of the 66 books in this Christian but not Catholic Bible that I have here. All right, so you find the and these are not in chronological order. It's the first 5 books of the Pentateuch that Moses wrote, right? Let me show you something else over here, which is I've got the books in the Bible over there, all my books there in the case that I told you about. So right there are the leather bound books in that wooden case that I have there for you that I actually gave to my husband for a gift for, I think it was Christmas a few years ago. So just beautiful, just a beautiful, but I don't want to mark those up. And you can see here, this book, it's a counselor's book. I use this to mark up. So, okay. So 1:1 means that it's going to be chapter 1. It's the book of Job. So we find the book of Job, not in chronological order, starts after all these other books, starts Job, which is why I wanted to see chronological order. Again, God to and fro on the waters. But what we hear in Job is he was to and fro on the land. It's so interesting to me. Okay, so we find the book. And then here you could see I just have it turned open to Job. And there is chapter 8. All right. And then you could see that there are the numbers here which show you the verses there. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's the way this one does with the verses there. Sometimes they're right in the middle, but this one has the verses on the outside. So Job 1:1 would be chapter 1, verse 1. And what do we see there is there was a man in the land of Uz. So now where did Job come from? The land of Uz. So I'm reading right here. From 1, I'm reading right here from 1 where it says Job and his friends in Uz, right there. All right. Chapter 1, and then this is going to be verse 1, and then here's a number 2. So this one doesn't have them on the outside there. There's a small number, so you could see those numbers there, which are a superscript, a tiny number that's raised above the words. A superscript there. Okay, so I'm going to read, all right? There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was blameless and upright and one who feared God and shunned evil. I don't think I put that up there. All right, so feared God and shunned. Oh, I did. All right, so those are the 2 points I wanted to first of all make. He was a person from Uz, right? A man from Uz who was upright. And how do we know that? Right from the words right there in Scripture at what? Chapter 1, verse 1. That's the end of chapter 1, verse 1. And shunned evil. So all that information there as a reference I use would be 1:1, right? That's my reference, came right from the Bible. If you wanted to see if I was speaking the truth about what the Bible said, you would go to Job chapter 1, verse 1 and see if it said he was blameless, upright, he feared God and shunned evil. And this feared God part is one of the things that Job shows us what that really means, to fear God. That he really does, God, have the power to do anything. He has the power to do anything. And by the way, he doesn't even have to explain it to you. And that is the story of Job. But, so God can do anything to you, and he doesn't even have to explain it to you. That's his position. That's what Job's about. But he won't do that to you. He'll do it sometimes, that there are things that are going to happen to you that appear to be unfair, right? That's going to happen to you. And that you will not have an explanation why that occurred. But it's not going to happen to you like it happened to Job. Job is our example. Job's job was to be an example for when we experience hard times and we don't know why, that we have to rely on our faith that God has a plan. What was the plan for Job? He had a job. He was the example. He was the example if all these things happen to you. They could happen to you, even if you are a just and upright person who fears God and shuns evil. All these things could happen to you, all of them, without explanation. God could do that, but he won't, because that was Job's job. He won't. He could do all those things, but he won't. Why? Because that was Job's job. And that's really what we're talking about. That is the thesis of, as I said earlier, of the book of Job. So let's take a look at, because it's 42 chapters. Why did it take 42 chapters to tell you what I just told you? And you likely get it, right? You likely get it. Oh, it's Job's job to set an example for us that if God wanted to do whatever he wanted to do, and he had his own reasons for it, he could do it. But he won't, because he did it to Job. I totally get it. 42 chapters? 42 chapters? And what you'll find is that in chapter 1, Job loses everything. So that happens right there in chapter 1, that he loses everything. All right, so, and then he gains everything. And the last 2 verses of chapter 42, I started to look at what I had next on there, and I didn't say this next. So I just want to get this point across. And so in the last 2 verses, maybe in the last verse, I think it's the last 2 verses as I looked it up, he gains everything back, but he can't get back his lost children, the ones he lost. So these are new children, a new family. So he didn't really even get back everything he lost. And by the way, how about that? How about no worries, no problems. You have 10 children, no big deal. You could lose them. I'll give you 10 more. I'll give you 20 more. No, actually, he only gave him the same amount. He gave him double of everything else. All right, so there you can see he was the richest man in the East. He was the greatest man in the East. And as we know from the Bookless classroom, when you come from the East, what did they have? They had beautiful linens, they had spices, they had fine gold, incense, all kinds of things that made life worth living. He was the greatest. He had more than anyone else, and yet he still feared God. All right, so all of this, we're getting all this information in chapter 1, and he loses this, all of it. He was the greatest in the East, and he lost everything in a matter of minutes. And you can read it in chapter 1, because it's all. Now there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them when the Sabeans raided them and took them away. Those are the people from Sheba, I read. Indeed, they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you this. And one after the other, he loses all of his property, and then his children is what he loses. So all in a matter of minutes, Job loses everything. And then, as I have up there, and then Job loses his health as well. And how does he lose this? He loses it because God offers Job up to Satan 2 times. This is what he says. He says, have you considered my servant Job? So Satan answered the Lord. Here. So now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord and Satan, and Satan came among them. So you're talking about the sons of God. Here's a great deep dive. Who are these sons of God? Why are they presenting themselves before the Lord? And why is Satan coming along as well? And the Lord said to Satan, from where do you come? So Satan answered the Lord and said, so if you take a look at or think about the 10 commandments, as they presented themselves in front of Pharaoh, that's the very first thing they did. Who are you and where are you from? What do you want from me? Right? So Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth and from walking back and forth on it. So God was going back and forth on the waters. And then the next thing we know, Satan's there going back and forth on the land. I just think that that is extraordinary. The idea of that really is just extraordinary. We think about living water and Satan is traveling back and forth on the land. I don't know. I have ideas, but you can't I can't branch off on everything, but you can branch off on those things that interest you. If that interests you, who are the sons of God? And why are they presenting themselves before the Lord? The Lord, God himself? And Satan is presenting himself right before the Lord God? So, from going back and forth on the earth and from walking back and forth on it. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil? So God literally says this of Job. So this is the second time we see Job's character. And then later on, after Job loses everything, God says the same thing. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil, and still he holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause. God is speaking to Satan like this after he took everything away. Satan took everything away. God allowed it. Satan took everything away from Job. God allowed it to set Job as the example. Why would God do the things that he does? He doesn't do them. He allows them. Satan does the evil work on this planet. He goes to and fro looking for people that he can do evil work on, is what he does. And God either permits it or he doesn't. Why would he permit it? Why would he permit this kind of suffering for Job? To set an example. That was Job's job, to set this kind of example, that God could take everything away from you without explanation. But he wouldn't, because that was Job's job. Not that he doesn't take things away, and not that those things aren't great, right? We lose people all the time. We lose people. But not to the extent that Job did. Especially comparatively speaking, what he had. He was the greatest in the East. Okay, now I skipped a couple points there, so let's go back to one of those points. He feared God. Let's talk about that. He rose early to give burnt offerings for undisclosed sins. Now, something here that I have been going over in the critical thinking classroom and would like to mention again, which was the book I dropped and said I don't want to drop that, is this book, Hyperbole and a Half. And go to my critical thinking classroom and you'll see a little bit more about it. But in this chapter here, which is called Second Identity is what it's called, or Identity Part 2. In this Identity Part 2, Allie goes looking for the truth, is what she does. And it is a very fearful thing for Allie because she doesn't know it. Because she really doesn't know it. So when we pray here, when we are praying for forgiveness and giving offerings or volunteering or listening to somebody when we don't really want to listen to them, what we are doing is we are making up for sins that we are not aware of. And that's what Allie did. Allie went down into a journey to figure out the lies that she had been telling herself. That is just, I cannot even describe the courage that something like that takes. It would be as if Job did what he had to go through on purpose, that he said, all right, bring it on, God. That's what Allie did. Allie said, bring it on. Bring on the lies. I want to know the lies. What Job did was he offered burnt offerings for the things he didn't know. Just like David in Psalms prayed to God to reveal the sins that he wasn't aware of, that he prayed for forgiveness for the things he wasn't aware of. Isn't that unbelievable? Isn't that unbelievable? If I'm unaware of it, dear God, there must not be intention. If there's not intention, dear Lord, then get off my back, because there's not intention. How is it my fault? And yet these people, David, and Allie and Job, prayed for things unseen, for sins that we are unaware of, for a heart that we know isn't true to what is right. I don't know how or why, but I'm praying for those things. Okay, I mean, honestly, Allie, you have set the word of the Lord in motion. You have set the word of the Lord in motion is what you did, Allie. And I could not even imagine an instance where I could be prouder. You set the word of the Lord in motion. You set an example for how you could feel like Job and how you could truly get out of it. And so what did Job do? He kind of wallowed in it as the example that he is supposed to be. So that's what he did. But in case he didn't see truth, or in case his children didn't see truth, he prayed for them. So that is why he feared God, because he knew God had the power and the right to do whatever he wanted. And so I'm afraid of that wrath, according to Job, and actually so am I. I am afraid of that wrath because I don't know when it's going to come down. It's kind of like an addict, right? An addict who's drinking, especially an addict for alcohol, who's drinking and drinking and drinking, and you don't know when it's going to come down the pike that, bam, you cannot turn away from that sin any longer. You're an alcoholic. It's no different. You are praying for things unseen, for sins unseen, for truths that you didn't have the courage like Allie did to investigate. That's why we pray, right? And then by the grace of God, hopefully those things will unfold. Those truths will unfold. Those truths will unfold in a timely manner, as in not in a hurry, right? Not in a hurry, but in a timely manner when they are supposed to unfold. So I am not smothered by the reality of the darkness of my sins, right? Of the lies I tell myself, in Allie's words, right? Or the mysteries that are out there that I don't know either, right? I'm praying for all those things because many things are unknown to me or hidden from me, even things that I should know that are inside myself. Like Allie was saying, why am I such a shitty person? I should know the answer to that question. And that's what Allie seeks out. Oh my gosh. And that's the reason why Allie has a right to be arrogant as well, which she says. She has a right to be arrogant because you did what no man does. Honest to God, you do. You do. You did what no man does. That's all I have to say. Okay, but they pray for it. They pray to see, and that's what Job feared. He feared that I am offending God without even knowing it, because that is a clear possibility. That's a clear possibility that many things are going on behind the scenes that I'm completely unaware of. And then to have this fear of, not escaping the punishment, even though I didn't know. Right? And what if that sin was really great? What if it was really great? What if, in Allie's words, I threw sand at somebody who was, lost their mother yesterday and was blind and crippled, and, which happened when you lost your mother, whatever, right? What if I just threw sand in that kid's face, right? The reality of that without ever knowing that was the extent of your sin, right? We could do that even with, beeping the horn behind, which guilty. I can't even tell you how many times I'm guilty of that. And what if it is a frustrated, hurt, elderly person, or even couple, which is even worse, right? So the wife gets to see her husband humiliated because you are beeping the horn because he's too slow for you. Whoa, what a sin. What a sin. What a sin. So Job is praying for those things as well. Why? Because if I did that, dear Lord, if I honked my horn on somebody who just lost all kinds of things, and his wife heard it, and now I humiliated the husband in front, and he didn't know what to do, and he was now frightened and afraid. But I didn't know. I didn't know. Don't you think that we need to be praying for forgiveness for those kinds of sins that we really would never have done that had we known? Do we have to ask for forgiveness? Well, Job said so. Why? Because he feared the repercussions of even those kinds of sins, right? Sins that are unintentional. He feared the repercussions of those. I would fear the repercussions. I should fear the repercussions of how many times I beeped that horn when somebody else in front of me just had a really, really bad day or week or year or lifetime, right? And I'm the last straw beeping the horn. Wow. So that's what Job is all about. All right, so let's see what's next up there. All right, so he was offered up by God to Satan twice, right? Have you looked at Job? Have you considered my servant Job? 2 times he says that. And he offered up his things, and then he offered up Job's health. So Job was plagued with sores that he had to, and parasites, literally parasites that he could see, worms is what's described as. And they would, eat away at the flesh. And then, so what did he have to do? He had to scrape that dead flesh away. Why? Because they would hide underneath the flesh and make everything worse. It had to be open so the wound could be open and, dry out. And as it dried out, what did he do? He took pottery and was literally scraping away at the dead skin using broken pottery that he had. I just could not imagine how Job did not curse God. All right, and then what happened was Job had, but he does curse his birth, right? But he was visited by 3 friends, and when he was visited by 3 friends, he curses so they sat there for a week and didn't say a word, because I'd imagine, and the reality of it, when you think about it, this isn't, a Marvel comic story by any stretch of the imagination. This is what would happen in real life, which is why the Bible is really good examples for what we can do to become more and more like the image and likeness of God, because it's not a Marvel comic book. He's scraping his skin with pottery, and he has boils and sores after God offered him up. So his friends are sitting there for a whole entire week. And remember, these are dignitaries, right? These are prestigious people who have high positions, because he was the greatest in all the land. It's not his friends who are peasants who are meeting with him, right? It's dignitaries that are meeting with him, and they are so speechless. They're left speechless for a week by his condition. And then his friends make all kinds of suggestions. And of course, what would those suggestions be? Well, the same kinds of suggestions that you or I would have in that situation, right? Why Christian individuals say things like, well, we have AIDS and the Holocaust and all of these things as outcomes of people being sinful. And there is truth to that, without a doubt. The consequences of sin is death, right? The consequence of sin is death. We know that. And we were told that it is. So the consequences are very great for our behaviors, right? Okay, but where was I with that thought? So what would the suggestions be? What would the suggestions be? What'd you do? What did you do? Oh my God, Job, what did you do? You're scraping off your dry skin with broken pottery. Dear God, Job, what did you do? That's what the 3 friends are saying. And they are examining it for about 35 chapters of examining every possible thing. And Job gives all of his responses to them. No, I am upright. I am this person. His first response is, why would God have brought me into this world? Why would he bring me into this world if he's only going to take everything away? What's the purpose in that? And we've all done that, right? What is the purpose in what God is doing? All right. And so they're saying, look at yourself, look at yourself, look at yourself, Job. You must have done something. And even as you stand here and deny it, Job, your mere denial tells us you did something. So 30 or so chapters, this is how what they talk about. And then Job's response. Let's start with Job 28. I want to read this now to you. And we're going to start reading. As I said, I was going to start doing, 15 minutes ago. Surely there is a mine for silver and a place. All right. Now, the other thing about Job is that it's written in poetry. So understand that it's not the easiest thing to understand, but it's really not hard because the poetry is understandable. The concept here is understandable. Job's response to these men who say you must have done something wrong. You can imagine what Job wants to say. And so you could hear what he is saying in this sort of poetic way. It's very easy to understand. Surely there is a mine for silver and a place where gold is refined. Iron is taken from the earth and copper is smelted from ore. Man puts an end to darkness and searches every recess for ore in the darkness and the shadow of death. He breaks open a shaft away from people in places forgotten by feet. They hang far away from men. They swing to and fro, and for the earth from it comes bread. But underneath it is turned up as by fire. Its stones are the source of sapphires, and it contains gold dust. That path no bird knows. He's talking about all the treasures within the earth's core. They're there for man. No bird knows about gold in the recesses of the earth. Nor has the falcon's eye seen it. The proud lions have not trodden it, nor has the fierce lion passed over it. He puts his hand on the flint. He overturns the mountains at the roots. He cuts out channels in the rocks, and his eye sees every precious thing. He dams up the streams from trickling. What is hidden, he brings forth to light. Man does this, not lion, not any creature. This is what man does. This is what Job is saying to his friends in response to his friends. But where can wisdom be found, and where is the place of understanding? Man does not know its value, nor is it found in the land of the living. The deep says, it is not in me, and the sea says, it is not with me. Wisdom. Wisdom isn't in the sea. I can't go to the sea and say, give me wisdom, right? He says the sea would say, it is not in me. It cannot be purchased for gold, nor can silver be weighed for its price. It cannot be valued in the gold of Ophir. So that must be a place. And precious onyx or sapphire, neither gold nor crystal can equal it, nor can it be exchanged for jewelry or fine gold. No mention shall be made of coral or quartz, for the price of wisdom is above rubies. The topaz of Ethiopia cannot equal it, nor can it be valued in pure gold. I can't give you pure gold and say, give me wisdom. From where then does wisdom come, and where is the place of understanding? It is hidden from the eyes of all living. You think, friends, you have the answer. It's hidden from you too. That's what he's saying. And concealed from the birds of the air. Destruction and death say, we have heard a report about it with our ears. God understands its ways, and he knows its place. For he looks to the ends of the earth and sees under the whole heavens, to establish a weight for the wind, and apportioned the waters by measure, when he made a law for the rain and a path for the thunderbolt. And he saw wisdom and declared it and prepared it. Indeed, he searched it out. And to man he said, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. And to depart from evil is understanding. What is he saying? That no matter how I search the earth, which is above what any animal on this planet can do, I cannot find wisdom. Because why? God sees the whole picture. I don't see the whole picture. I can see only a part of it. And this is what I've been saying for a long time. You cannot know the whole story. You cannot know the whole story. So the only way that you can operate is with the intention for goodness. Even Allie, as much as she wanted to throw sand in people's faces, knew she couldn't operate because that is not operating for goodness. And I will not have wisdom without operating in goodness. That is what we are saying here. Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. To be afraid of what he could and might do for my benefit and good. That scares the crap out of me. I don't want to get spanked for my own benefit. I don't want to get my phone taken away for my own benefit. I don't want to have to do chores for my own benefit. But God has the wisdom, doesn't he? And no matter how I search for it in other places and try and pay for it with gold, he says, get back to work for your own good. And it is hard for me to know that. So what do I have to do? I have to depart from evil in order to understand that God is in control. That's what that says. Behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. To fear the Lord, that is wise. And to depart from evil is understanding. Why? Why? Because he has the wisdom, not me, as long as I search. Why? Because he has the big picture, right? And to depart from evil is understanding that he has it under control. He's got the game plan. I do not. Job's summary defense. Job further continued his discourse and said, oh, that I were as in months past, as in the days when God watched over me, when his lamp shone upon my head, and when by his light I walked through darkness, just as I was in the days of my prime, when the friendly counsel of God was over my tent, when the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were around me, when my steps were bathed with cream, and the rock poured out rivers of oil for me. When I went out to the gate by the city, when I took my seat in the open square, the young men saw me and hid, and the aged rose and stood. The princes refrained from talking and put their hand on their mouths. Shh, he's ready to speak. Job is ready to speak. When the ear heard, then it blessed me. Oh, that was really smart what he said. God bless those words, right? And when the eye saw, then it approved me, because I delivered the poor who cried out, the fatherless, and the one who had no helper. The blessing of a perishing man came upon me, and I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. My justice was like a robe and a turban. I was the eyes to the blind, and I was the feet to the lame, and I was the father to the poor, and I searched out the cause that I did not know. I broke the fangs of the wicked and plucked the victim from his teeth. As you criticized me and said I did something wrong, these are the things I did. Then I said, I shall die in my nest and multiply my days as the sand. My root is spread out to the waters, and the dew lines all night on my branch. My glory is fresh within me, and my bow is renewed in my hand. Men listened to me and waited and kept silence for my counsel. After my words, they did not speak again, and my speech settled on them as dew. They waited for me as for the rain, and they opened their mouth wide as for the spring rain. If I mocked at them, they did not believe it. And the light of my, so if I mocked them behind their backs and somebody said, oh, he mocked you, they didn't believe it, because Job was so upright, nobody would believe that Job would mock somebody behind their back. And the light of my countenance they did not cast down. I chose the way for them and sat as chief. So I dwelt as a king in the army, and one who comforts comforts men. No, mourners. But now they mock at me, men younger than I, whose fathers I disdain to put with the dogs of my flock. Indeed, what profit is my strength of their hands to me? Their vigor has perished. They are gaunt from want and famine, fleeing late to the wilderness, desolate and waste. Who pluck mallow by the bushes and broom tree roots for their food? They were driven out from among men. They shouted at them as at a thief. They had to live in the clefts of the valleys, in caves of the earth and rocks. Among the bushes they brayed, under nestles they nestled. They were sons of fools, yes, sons of vile men. They were scourged from the land, and now I am their taunting song. So he's talking about all these awful people who had to hide from me their sins, and now they taunt me. Yes, I am their byword. They abhor me. They keep far from me. They do not hesitate to spit in my face, because he has loosened my bowstring and afflicted me. They have cast off restraint before me. At my right hand the rabble arises. They push away my feet, and they raise against me their ways of destruction. They break up my path. They promote my calamity. They have no helper. They come as broad breakers under the ruinous storm. They roll along, terrors and turned upon me. They pursue my honor as the wind. And now my soul is poured out because of my plight. The days of my affliction take hold of me. My home and my bones are pierced in me at night, and my gnawing pains take no rest. By great force my garment is disfigured. It binds me about as the collar of my coat. So he's got so many sores on him that his clothing is getting wrapped, and they're binding him in his sores. And I have become like dust and ashes. Okay, there I'm going to stop. We're going to pick this up. So we're going to see we're going to start then with the next so that was pretty much the idea of what Job is going to say. And then we're going to go ahead when we come back here tomorrow. And so that was Job's response. And so I went all the way through pretty much chapter 30 there. We're going to go and look at Elihu's response. Elihu was the fourth friend who sat there. He was the youngest of the friends and sat there listening to the three elders. And so when we come back tomorrow, we're going to listen to Elihu's response, who was from the young man. Let's see if he also thinks that there was a sin that Job committed that he was not aware of. But here we heard Job proclaiming all the things that he's done and saying, no, you're wrong. There's something else going on. And likely Job was right. There was something else going on, and he knew God, and he knew God's image. And that is what helped Job survive these trials and tribulations. He knew in his heart of hearts, God wouldn't do this without a reason. He wouldn't do it without a reason. And it's not about my behavior, because I have been upright. He even said it himself. Okay, that's good for today. This is Dr. Annette Feravich, and I am the teacher, and we are here in the spiritual classroom. Thanks for joining me. I will see you same time here tomorrow. Check out my other classrooms, because it does bring everything else together.